All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for Scaling AI-Powered Learning and Engagement. This is the first session in our four-part series exploring how AI can enhance teaching, learning, and human connection in higher education in ways that are responsible, ethical, and grounded in pedagogy. Before we begin, today's session is being recorded, and we'll share the slides and resources afterwards, including the white papers we'll be referencing. And please use the chat. We really want to hear your perspectives throughout. So we're at a breaking point where faculty and students are experiencing real pressure. Workloads are increasing, expectations are shifting, and AI is introducing a lot of questions and mixed emotions. So our guiding question for today is, how can AI support the human side of teaching, not replace it? How can AI restore time, capacity, creativity, and connection, the parts of teaching that drew many of us into education in the first place? So I am Jamie Ryan. I'm a channel account executive here at Anthology. I cover a higher education business, and I'm joined today by Dr. Lisa Clark, Associate Vice President of Academic Transformation at Anthology, and Will Reed, Director of Higher Education at TD Synnex. So here's a quick look at what we'll cover in today's session. We'll start by rethinking how teaching and learning are evolving in the age of AI, drawing insights from Anthology's Reframing Blooms for the Age of AI white paper. And then we'll look at the human side, how AI can help reduce burnout, restore time, and bring focus back to creativity and connection. Now we'll unpack what ethical AI in practice really means, how Anthology's trustworthy AI principles keep educators in control, and why AI literacy is becoming essential in today's classrooms. We'll wrap up with key takeaways and a preview of what's next in the series. As we go, please drop your questions or insights in the chat. We'll gather them, and at the end, we'll come back to them and answer them. So before we go deeper, we'd love to learn from you where your institution's at in AI adoption journey. And we'll give you some time there to answer those questions. We'll give you a couple more seconds here. It looks like there's a few more that haven't answered yet. And we'll give you a couple more seconds. So this is all great. And what we're seeing here really does mirror the research that institutions are curious, but they kind of want some structure and clarity. And that's exactly what we're going to discuss here today. So Lisa, I'd love to start with you. And before we dive in, could you take a moment to introduce yourself and share what you're hearing from educators right now, what's driving their questions, concerns, or excitement around AI in teaching and learning?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jamie. So, hi, everybody. Lisa Clark here. I have been with Anthology with Blackboard for the last 11 years, just over. And I do come from a higher ed background. I've been an administrator, faculty member, executive, and all of that throughout my career. So I'm really thrilled to be here with you today to talk not only about how teaching and learning is going to be evolving through the age of AI, but also some ways that we're looking at, what this could look like for us as educators in the future. I'm still part-time, an adjunct faculty member myself. So this is something very near and dear to my heart here.
That's great to hear, Lisa, and thank you for continuing to educate others while also helping us out here at Anthology.
Yeah.
Great. So what I'd like to do is, with your white paper, Reframing Blooms for the Age of AI, it introduces a powerful shift in how we think about learning. Can you walk us through what has changed and why it matters now?
Absolutely. So, as those of you who are listening, as you may know, Bloom's taxonomy has been the foundation of instructional design for literally decades. And it does demonstrate those different cognitive levels of thinking when it comes to teaching and learning. But as you also might know, Bloom's has not remained static throughout the years. There's been revisions of this. And most recently, I think it's actually been a good 15 years or 20 years or so, but it has changed. And with teaching and learning and technologies that have come about and how those practices have changed, has so also this taxonomy. So as I explained in the white paper that you just mentioned, Jamie, by introducing the use of generative AI in teaching and learning, we're actually looking at the collapse of those lower tiers of cognition. So as you see on the left-hand side there on the pyramid, that's the traditional Bloom's. And then the reframing of this is the version on the right-hand side here. Excuse me. And as we're looking at that, we're looking at the requirement of instructors to design experiences that can focus more on questioning, on curation, and also co-creation. So while AI doesn't eliminate Bloom's, nor the levels of cognitive thinking, which is, I hope, obvious to most, but there has been threats of AI eliminating that, which is what drove me to write this paper. But those different levels of cognitive thinking, as we look at it, could be reordered. And in this paper, I called out the moving of content production to meaning construction. And as AI could be then a partner, a cognitive partner that can ignite higher order thinking.
Yeah, that's great. And that transform layer, the idea that learning results in meaningful action, what does that look like in real practice?
Yeah, great question. So as you see, there's another level right on the right-hand side there of transform. And that layer was added as just a thought process that I was coming up with in, how else can AI evolve us as, in teaching and learning. So that transformation is then demonstrated through meaningful action. So it's really a place where knowledge intersects with things like empathy, ethics, and community impact. All those things that, make us being the human in control of this learning process. So while AI may assist in that process, the meaning behind this, the values, the decisions, the empathy, and everything I just mentioned, all that remains fully human then.
Great. So for faculty wanting to start small, what's one low lift change that they can make?
Yeah, so I guess my first thing would be just to start somewhere, right? But the power of AI does lie in exposing cognition. And we really want to think more about how students think, how they iterate, how they can justify decisions while in collaboration with AI. So as I mentioned, again, I'm going to reference the paper a couple different times here probably, but as I mentioned, the goal here is visible thinking. So put that in air quotes, right? So it's really like visible thinking. It's not invisible automation, which is how I think a lot of people think of AI. So when we think of it more like how they made decisions, how they can revise outputs, how they can ensure credibility, that alone is a shift that moves the assignment from a product that's also a product feature to really something that is true metacognition.
Great. So we also want to talk about the human side of this. Anthology's research white paper addressing the hidden crisis, the realities of faculty burnout, highlights that faculty aren't burning out from teaching, they're burning out from everything surrounding teaching. What stood
Mhm.
out to you in that research?
Yeah, so I think any of us who have taught, especially those of us that teach online, can all resonate with this, right? So in this paper that we had about faculty burnout, faculty described feeling exhausted by really administrative weight. And the thing is, the passion for teaching is still there. I mean, none of us get into teaching for the money, right? It's always because we really want to impact students. We want to impact the future of students in that learning process. So for us, we know that the passion was still there, and it's just the capacity for that actual passion that's being stretched thin. So consider this, with AI, it can offer us a moment here of really not replacement, but renewal. So we can return to the parts of teaching that technology once overshadowed. That's really kind of like this return to teaching moment that I could absolutely get behind, because you can then reclaim time for mentorship or connection. And those ultimately then directly and very positively can then impact the student.
And that brings us to the core idea today. AI is not here to replace teaching.
Mhm.
AI is here to help us return to teaching, back to mentorship, back to connection, back to reflection.
Absolutely.
So, Lisa, how can AI give faculty time back without taking away ownership or academic voice?
Yeah. So, look, the bottom line here really is that AI is not the instructor, right? So when we think of AI, let's think of it more as the collaborator, that collaborator that can be used to really support content creation. The guts of the content is certainly going to come from the instructor, from that expert voice. And we want faculty to see AI as a helper in all of this, not a substitution. The expertise, like I said, it still belongs to the instructor, but when AI can generate content based on your expertise, and that could be pulling together an assignment or even a rubric, student feedback, any kind of engagement based on your content, the faculty member can still interpret that content, they can revise it, and they certainly would be the ones to approve it. So you're not just handing over decisions to AI, you're actually removing the burden of starting from zero. I love AI for idea generation, for instance, and inside some of the features we have at Blackboard that we'll talk about later, that's where I get some of my best creativity, because sometimes you get very stagnant in what it is that you're trying to think about. And if AI can help, like I said, remove that burden of starting from zero, that's a beautiful thing for me as an instructor. My and like I said, that's my favorite thing to do. So it's one of those times when I can't possibly think of another way to pose another question to the student, whether that's in a discussion board or some kind of authentic assessment. I just kind of get writer's block, sometimes. And I think other people can probably relate to that. So it's really about using that as idea generation, creating some engaging discussion board prompts, giving me different ideas of how to assess my students. And that's just one example, right? There's many more that we can talk about.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I'm using AI today in my current role.
Great.
So, if someone's feeling overwhelmed, where should they begin?
Yeah. So like I said, just start. You're not going to break anything, right? So start where the stress is highest, perhaps, not necessarily where stakes are highest. Think about your different stress levels. If that is, giving feedback to students, think about ways that you can maybe streamline that process. So that all is kind of what I refer to as cognitive offloading, not outsourcing. So it's there to free up bandwidth. Use AI for the first time to do some time-saving tasks that you have before you, like within Blackboard, we have amazing AI features, many of them actually, that can really help immediately set up your course structure based on your syllabus content. Literally, it can take seconds to create, 8 different modules for an 8-week course or 16 modules for a 16-week course based on the content of your syllabus. If you're like me, in my syllabus, I have all that already broken down. So it's literally taking my content and putting it into a navigatable format for me inside the course. You also could have it help you rewrite instructions for clarity if you're a little too familiar with the content and you need a voice of, another party, so to speak, to help you rewrite something. That's a great use of it as well. And also, this is probably my favorite thing to save time with. If anybody's ever heard me speak before, I love using rubrics, but I don't like writing rubrics. It's just not my favorite thing to do, but I think it's incredibly important to the teaching process. So let AI do that for you. Let them take a first pass at your rubrics for you, and build that out. And you can always edit it. You can always change it. But again, with all of this, you remain in control, right? So it's the ability to rethink, review, and refine.
All those are great call outs. And Will, I'd love to maybe pivot to you here next and bring you into the conversation. But before we do, uh, before we dive into the Anthology Trustworthy AI framework, I'd love for you to maybe introduce yourself and share what you're hearing from institutions, and what kinds of questions or concerns are coming up as you chat with them and as they start to explore AI more seriously.
Yeah, great, Jamie. Thank you. So, my name is Will Reed. I'm the Director of Education here at TD Synnex. Been here for about 5 years. But before that, all of my time was spent at the institutional level. I spent 10 years as an IT director in higher education before moving into K-12, and spent the next 10 years as a Chief Technology Officer in K-12. So I have a little experience in, in the education field, to say the least. From a concern and a question perspective, I think a lot of the concerns and questions that are raised, Lisa kind of addresses here a little bit. But I think most of them come from an academic integrity and pedagogy perspective. how do they ensure students still engage in meaningful learning, critical thinking, and most importantly, original work? Lisa kind of talked about that a little bit already. Faculty and staff readiness and obviously institutional change, right? There's so many faculty administrators that are still unfamiliar with how to integrate AI into teaching and learning. And then probably last but not least, and probably one of the more important ones is alternative perspectives, focusing on support versus enforcement, if you will. Instead of only looking for misuse, another angle is to, proactively support students and faculty with AI literacy guidelines and pedagogy redesign, kind of like Lisa talked about earlier.
So the Ethical AI Roadshow report outlines how Anthology's trustworthy AI principles, transparency, accountability, fairness, and empowerment. Will, what does that mean in practice?
Yeah, Jerry, that's a good question. It means AI should support judgment, not replace it. Every AI feature in Blackboard is designed so that the educator sees what was generated. They can edit it, they can approve it, they can choose not to use it. Control stays with the human, not the AI platform.
So we're talking about like an assistant, not automation.
Exactly. And we encourage institutions to adopt AI gently, starting with small confidence building use cases, building shared norms and ensuring faculty feel supported, not rushed. That's the last thing we want.
Yeah, and that's such an important point, Will. We're also seeing more institutions start to weave AI literacy directly into their curriculum, not just in computer science or IT, but basically across every discipline. Could you share what that looks like in practice, maybe referencing the example from Ohio State University that came up during the AI Roadshow?
Absolutely. So what we're seeing in Ohio State and increasingly across higher education, period, is a shift towards treating AI literacy as a foundational skill, much like digital literacy or critical thinking. They're not positioning it as a separate course or a computer science elective. It's becoming a layer that touches every discipline. The focus is on teaching students to question, verify, and ethically use AI in their own fields. That's the future of education, one where AI supports critical thinking, communication, and creativity, not shortcuts or automation. In Ohio State, they're not alone in this, obviously. Arizona State, in Arizona State, their leadership Learning with AI initiative provides ready to adopt faculty modules that teach students to use AI responsibly, from journalism to sustainability. They're helping learners understand how to ask better questions, evaluate information, and apply AI ethically in real world contexts. At the University of Florida, their AI across the curriculum program ensures every student, whether in law, nursing, or even liberal arts, graduates with AI literacy. It's become part of their general education as fundamental as writing or quantitative reasoning. And at Stanford, the Human-Centered AI Initiative is equipping both students and faculty with frameworks for ethical reasoning and transparency, emphasizing how AI should serve humanity, not replace it. These examples, they just show us that ethical AI isn't just a technical framework, it's a cultural shift. It's about ensuring AI empowers educators and learners while preserving the human judgment, agency, most importantly, and accountability. That's exactly what Anthology's trustworthy AI principles are built around: transparency, fairness, accountability, and empowerment. Every AI feature in Blackboard follows those same guardrails. You can always see what's generated, you can edit it, you can approve it, or you can discard it. AI supports judgment, it never replaces it.
Yeah, thank you for that, Will. Those are some really powerful examples of how institutions are currently taking ownership of this transformation. And it really brings us back to the heart of today's conversation. AI isn't just about efficiency or automation, it's about restoring what education was always meant to be: a space for curiosity, mentorship, and deeply human learning. When we think about everything we've discussed today, a few key ideas rise to the top. First, AI should enhance, not replace, human teaching and learning. The goal isn't to automate instruction, but to amplify the parts of teaching that require empathy, judgment, and creativity. Secondly, well-designed AI gives faculty time back. When tools handle these repetitive layers, things like formatting, first drafts, or feedback starters, instructors gain that time to mentor, inspire, and connect with their students. Thirdly, reframing blooms reminds us that learning today isn't just about recalling knowledge, it's about using that knowledge to transform understanding and make an impact. AI can help students move from information to application transformation. Fourth, trust and transparency remain at the center of all of this. Faculty and students need to know where AI is being used, how it's making decisions, and that they stay in control of the final outcome. And finally, the future of education is human-led and AI-supported. AI is not the destination, it's the enabler that allows us to get back to meaningful teaching and authentic learning. And in today's session, we focused on the why AI can restore capacity, encourage deeper learning, and strengthen human control. In our next session, we'll move into the how Blackboard's AI conversation tools can help students engage, think critically, and practice academic reasoning in real classroom contexts. We encourage you to download our white papers, share them with your colleagues, and register for the remaining sessions in our series. The next discussion will move from theory to application, using Blackboard tools to illustrate what AI-powered learning looks like in practice. So I want to thank you all for sharing your thoughts and questions throughout our session today. We've been keeping an eye on that chat and on our Q&A, and we'd like to take a few moments right now to address some of the questions that came in during the presentation. So the first question, Lisa, I'm going to point this towards you. A lot of faculty feel hesitant or unsure where to start with AI. What's a good first step that doesn't add stress? And I think we kind of already touched on this, but it'd be great to maybe hear it again.
Yeah, I can't stress it enough about idea generation. So let's take a perfect example of one of the features we have in Blackboard now, which is our AI design assistant. And it's not one I've talked about just yet, but it does, well, I kind of did, because it is where you're also going to be able to pull in and do a draft rubric, for instance. But there's also, with our Blackboard AI design assistant, you can also do things like assignment generation. You can have the assignment built. It will provide instructions. You can always revise it and give it your own expertise and tweak it into your own voice. And like we've said, you're going to remain fully in control, which is all the beauty of this. You don't have to start from scratch. You don't have to start from a blank page. It just gives you a beginning point. That one shift alone, it just saves so much time. And it's really the same principle behind the different level of blooms that I spoke about, in that the curate to question levels, where it's reframing that model. So it's not always, what the information is. It's going to turn more into, I think, how you're getting the information, where are you getting it from, how are you validating it? And AI can help with that idea generation. It can help with suggestions. And then the intentional meaning will come from your choices, your edits, your revisions, and how you choose to use it.
Another question that we have here is, how do we ensure students aren't using AI to bypass learning? I feel like that's probably the big one, right?
It is a big one. It is a big one. And it's not one that we have all the answers to yet, right? We're getting there. And we're certainly keeping our, fingers on the pulse of this as we move forward with how AI is impacting teaching and learning. But really, transparency is going to be the key here. Transparency itself is the pedagogy of the AI era. And believe it or not, what matters to us most is not only that AI was used, but it's, again, the how and the why. I actually encourage my students to use AI in some of their projects. And believe me, there's some pushback. They're all worried about getting accused of cheating and that kind of thing. And I'm like, look, I'm your professor and I'm telling you to use it. I ask for screenshots. I ask for how they're going to question AI to get information from it. And it's a little different. It's a different take on teaching, right? So we've been really using teaching at this point since the beginning of the internet, haven't we? I mean, we've really used the internet to pull information. It, went from encyclopedias to the internet. So it's really not any different. It's just a different way of obtaining information, except now we are able to create content with that information. So it's a step beyond where we've been, right? We're looking at the new literacy of the AI age. We're thinking about this being a key to the process, and that key is to design process visible learning. So ask students to show how they used AI. What did they change? Why did they change it? Did they validate it? Was it giving biased information or incomplete information? And when students start to articulate that reasoning, they're really building critical thinking, even when AI is part of that workflow. So it's a way of embracing this and thinking about other ways that we can, pedagogically look at this. And the goal here really is not to necessarily block AI, but to teach students to think with it in an ethical and responsible way.
Yeah, it's a great call. It makes me think of, when we were growing up and your math teacher said, you're not always going to have a calculator with you. And
Exactly. Exactly.
now we all
We've
have a
come a long
calculator
way,
with
right?
us.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And we can't expect students to not use AI and then us not use AI as well. So AI is going to be, the genie's already out of the bottle and we have to maintain it. So with that in mind, Will, how do we maintain academic integrity while using AI in teaching and assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I was the same in math. I was hoping we would always have a calculator. Um, so I think integrity comes from transparency and agency. So Blackboard's AI tools are built so that everything that AI generates is visible, editable, and reviewable, kind of like we talked earlier. Faculty decide what's kept, what's modified, and even what's discarded. The educator stays in the loop, so AI supports judgment again, and it doesn't replace it.
And what if an institution is interested in AI, but faculty feel overwhelmed or concerned about losing that control that AI might pose?
Yeah, I think, we kind of covered that a little bit earlier, but I think it's really important not to rush that, right? We recommend gentle adoption, really slow adoption, bringing people up, making sure they're comfortable. Start with small, low stake tasks, right? That reduce the workload, like drafting feedback or creating question prompts, something that they're all able to get a hold of and do, right? And when faculty sees that AI isn't taking over, it's actually giving time back to them, which I think they all want, right? Then confidence will just grow naturally from there.
And Lisa, I'm going to pivot back to you for this last question I have
Sure.
here. But where should AI fit into the broader instructional or strategic planning?
So I would caution against being too cautious. Um, in other words, we can't ignore this, right? I think it's something that we're going to have to embrace, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean that AI is a replacement layer. It really should be an amplification layer to really strengthen what makes learning very distinctly human. And maybe that seems a little opposite of how some people are thinking about it, but that's the direction that I know we're taking. That's really the North Star to the framework that we've been talking about here, is to use AI where it amplifies the human work of teaching. That's the key. And as Will, went through a number of those different models that we're seeing happen at different institutions, I don't see how we can get around the idea of planning and, creating our strategic plans, looking at instructional planning without including AI at this point. As a matter of fact, we have an exemplary course rubric that is something that we provide to our clients at Blackboard. We just revised it recently to include AI as part of that process, along with it, more about accessibility, which AI can also help with. So there's different areas where it is going to become incredibly useful and incredibly powerful. And I think that's where strategic plans and those kinds of things have to really take that into consideration. We talk about digital literacy. We've been talking about that for years, like you said, Jamie, and now we're looking at AI literacy, right? So teaching with AI can support reflection. It can, definitely help with engagement, with feedback and providing, more succinct feedback even, and then also critical thinking. So those elements that can define high level, high quality learning, I think are going to be huge. The strategy itself is not to use AI everywhere, but to use AI where it strengthens that human element of teaching.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lisa. And so how does today, what we learned about, how will that connect with learners in our next session? And I think that today we explored the why, right? Why AI can restore capacity, deepen learning, and support well-being. And in our next session, move into the how. We'll show how Blackboard's AI conversation tool supports inquiry, discussion, and critical thinking inside real course experiences. So today was the foundation, and next time we'll see how the framework works in action. I want to thank you all for joining us today and for your thoughtful questions. We hope this session helped reframe how AI can restore time, renew creativity, and strengthen the human connection at the center of teaching. And if we didn't get to your question, or if you're still reflecting on everything that we discussed, we'll be sure to include everything in the white papers that we'll send afterwards. And don't miss our next session, where we'll show how these ideas come to life in real course design and student interactions. Our contact details and LinkedIn links are below, and we'd love to keep the conversation ongoing. Thank you all for your time, and we look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you, Jamie. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
And thanks, Will.